This is Wet Painters, one of SpongeBob's most stressful episodes. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick being complete idiots just hurting themselves, and Mr. Krabs hears this and storms out all mad. And turns out they're completing some sort of ritual to get customers, which involves hurting themselves, and they learn this ritual from Squidward. Honestly, it's nice that Squidward's getting some sort of revenge on them for always torturing him, but weirdly they are enjoying the pain. Anyways, Mr. Krabs is mad at them for wasting money, so I guess he closes down the Krusty Krab, literally losing money, and takes them to his house. He starts teasing them like he's about to reveal something amazing, and they are all excited. Turns out though, Mr. Krabs wants them to paint his house, which doesn't seem too bad, but Mr. Krabs tells them that the paint is permanent, and if he sees one drop on anything but the walls, he will literally kill them and frame their butts. What's crazy about this is Mr. Krabs knows that SpongeBob and Patrick are idiots. I mean, the intro gave him a great example of this, so why is he trusting them with painting his house? Does Mr. Krabs want an excuse to kill them? I don't know. Anyway, from this statement you can already tell this episode is going to be stressful, especially because once they go into his house, there are a bunch of stuff on his wall. SpongeBob, being smart though, wants to take everything off the walls, but Patrick, who just loves to make things worse, is like,
nah, that's too much work.
And for some reason SpongeBob agrees, so they set up the tarps, and this scene just shows how inexperienced they are with this. We can already tell too, SpongeBob is anxious, and for some reason Patrick does not care, but now they have to open the permanent paint cans, so SpongeBob takes a screwdriver out and starts getting to work, and this is so stressful because this paint could go everywhere, and Patrick is making it so much worse.
Careful, SpongeBob. Careful, SpongeBob. Careful, SpongeBob.
But surprisingly, SpongeBob gets the lid off successfully. Then, as if Patrick was not just saying be careful, SpongeBob, he brings out a huge axe and slams the paint can, which could have been so bad, but somehow the paint can is invincible, so SpongeBob decides to open it instead. But this time a paint drop flings out and starts bouncing all over the tarps, looking like it's about to go onto something, but luckily it goes back into the paint can, and Patrick literally goes,
well, that was a ripoff.
Does homie have a death wish, or is he just so painfully unaware of what is going on? Anyway, SpongeBob makes a paintbrush out of his literal nose hair, so it's small enough to be precise, and Patrick does the same, but pulls out a disgusting amount of nose hair. Also, it's kind of disturbing realizing Patrick's nose is just a hole. SpongeBob though dips his paintbrush in the paint and carefully walks over to the wall, and he is so stressed out, he stands at the wall mentally preparing for 3 hours. Or did he? Well, we see that Patrick was the one holding the time cards, which makes me feel like he may have been trying to be funny, or maybe it was just a fourth wall break, I don't know, but kind of makes me question every time card I've ever seen, not gonna lie. Anyway, SpongeBob grows some balls and finally paints the wall, and he actually did it. Nothing bad happened and he's happy, but then the paint starts dripping, so he has to keep blowing in different ways so it doesn't touch anything, and this scene gave me so much anxiety, but he ends up blow drying the paint, thinking that would solve the problem, even getting cocky.
Yeah.
But he created a huge paint bubble. This freaks him out because, well, this is obviously bad, and he wonders what could be worse than this, and Patrick, being Patrick, is like,
I know what could be worse than this,
and blows another bubble, just further adding to the stress. He's not done making things worse either. Patrick is wanting to prove SpongeBob wrong for no reason, knowing his literal butt is on the line, proves him wrong again when SpongeBob's like,
I don't think this bubble could get any bigger.
and Patrick literally blows up the bubble until it pops. Luckily, somehow, the bubble paints all the walls perfectly without touching a single thing on the walls. Everything seems perfect, like they just won without having to do any hard labor. But this episode is 11 minutes, so something definitely went wrong, and it did. Turns out they got a microscopic drop of paint on Mr. Krabs' first ever dollar. Honestly, I have no idea how SpongeBob even saw this, but after he sees it, he curses in Bikini Bottom language.
Flapping Flotsam, what's that?
And me being me, I want to know if these are real words, so I looked it up. And supposedly flapping flotsam means something that is floating around aimlessly, like useless debris being tossed by waves, often used figuratively to refer to someone or something considered unimportant or insignificant, that is just floating around without purpose. Honestly, this definition kind of hurt my brain. I truthfully cannot comprehend it. I also may just be overthinking this, and it was just a funny play on words, but regardless, it's such a funny and iconic scene. And I always loved how SpongeBob used sailor type language in their show. Anyways, after SpongeBob's eyes shatter from anxiety, Patrick is confused because his eyes are not good enough to see his microscopic paint. So SpongeBob decides to try to fix it by wiping the dollar and makes it so much worse. And Patrick can definitely see it now. SpongeBob starts genuinely crashing out. And let me just say I absolutely love the expressions in this episode. They are hilarious and really showcase the stress perfectly. Mid crash out, SpongeBob visions what will happen if Mr. Krabs sees his dollar, and we see their butts mounted on the wall with Mr. Krabs just chilling. Honestly, pretty unsettling, I cannot lie. Anyway, Patrick calms down SpongeBob, telling him they can definitely get this paint off with something. nothing. So they try a washer, it doesn't work. Try a sander, it doesn't work. Try a hose, it doesn't work. But literally puts a hole in Patrick. They pretty much try everything, just straight up torturing Patrick, but nothing works. Patrick then has a furious crash out, talking about Mr. Krabs is stupid, and it's just $1, and every dollar looks the same, giving SpongeBob an idea that they could just use Patrick's dollar. But Patrick decides to use $1 on a vending machine that somehow just spawned in Mr. Krabs' house. Luckily, the dollar comes back out, and SpongeBob yells at him, and he just keeps putting it back in over and over, missing so many opportunities to save their butts, literally. And he just comes back to SpongeBob unfazed with his chocolate bar. Genuinely do not understand Patrick's brain. Even with all of this though, SpongeBob still has hope and gives himself a pep talk, but we hear Mr. Krabs approaching, so he's cooked, and there's literally nothing else they can do. But I guess SpongeBob has an idea, and Mr. Krabs walks in, and the lights are off, and when he turns the light back on, they got the most suspicious looking smiles. At first though, Krabs is very impressed with how they did, but then he curses too.
Flipping fish fossils.
So we think he sees $1, but no, he's just impressed that he dusted his knickknacks. He keeps fake freaking out over everything but the dollar, stressing us and SpongeBob and Patrick out thinking that they're gonna die. Also, the paint bubble somehow literally painting this boat design on the wall, which is wild, but finally he gets to where the dollar is. And turns out SpongeBob's bright idea was to put a bunch of random paintings over it, which obviously is a bad idea. And Mr. Krabs starts taking the paintings off one by one. And when he gets the last one off, SpongeBob is on the wall like a painting and will not move until Mr. Krabs forces him off. And we think they're cooked. And Mr. Krabs seems so mad. One thing I want to point out about this scene as well is how even during this insanely stressful on the edge of your seat scene, they even sprinkle in some humor. We find out that Patrick drew on the dollar thinking Mr. Krabs wouldn't notice. SpongeBob is really the best at balancing different emotions. Anyways, Mr. Krabs, after scaring them, literally just licks the dollar and the paint just comes off. Yeah. Turns out the paint is most definitely not permanent. What? And Mr. Krabs just wanted to prank them, which is so messed up. But I guess it's better than my theory that he wanted to kill them. Anyways, SpongeBob and Patrick are obviously mad and they leave. And Mr. Krabs, being such a jerk, starts laughing like a maniac and all the paint comes off the wall, giving him his well-deserved karma. This episode was great and such a classic. I mean, it literally got a 9.5 rating on IMDb, which is insanely impressive. The idea for the episode was brilliant, giving two idiots an impossible task with a terrifying consequence, and they executed it perfectly. They just never stopped with the conflicts. There was always something bad happening, and you literally never get to relax. I remember as a kid being so insanely stressed watching this episode because I honestly thought my dog SpongeBob was about to be killed. Not only was this episode stressful, but it was also hilarious. SpongeBob's crash outs were so funny. I love the sailor cursing. The expressions and dialogue were great, especially the scene with Patrick putting $1 in the vending machine and SpongeBob just yelling at him. Speaking of that scene, I want to talk about Patrick in this episode. This episode did perfectly with Patrick's character by using him to add to the stress. Honestly, without Patrick in this episode, it would have been boring. And just by saying that, it shows how well his character was written for this episode. I never found him annoying at all, and him messing things up was honestly funny. SpongeBob and Patrick really complement each other in this episode. Just watching SpongeBob tweak out the entire time while Patrick was so chill was really entertaining. I also really enjoyed the plot twist. I honestly did not expect it. It also allows us to feel exactly what SpongeBob and Patrick felt storming out. I mean, we as an audience also stressed out the entire episode just to find out that it was all for nothing. So we also leave the episode mad at Mr. Krabs. I want to talk about Mr. Krabs for a second. This episode really shows Mr. Krabs' true colors. A prank is one thing, but what he did in this episode went way too far. Mr. Krabs knows that they're idiots and purposely did this knowing that they would mess up. Not only that, but he raised the stakes, giving them a literal death threat. While we know in the end it was all a joke, it doesn't matter, and realistically could give Mr. Krabs a 15-year jail sentence. Also, it slipped off his tongue so easily, like it's not his first time giving death threats. I mean, throughout this series, they give some hints that Mr. Krabs may actually be a murderer. Remember Squid and Clarinetland? That locker with the skeleton inside of it? Also, he does have all the personality traits. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He will do anything to get what he wants. As we know from Friend or Foe, he betrayed Plankton, disregarding their entire friendship just for their Krabby Patty formula. And also in this episode, he enjoyed watching SpongeBob and Patrick suffer. He found it hilarious, showing he has no sympathy or guilt. I mean, he risked his entire house just so he could torture SpongeBob and Patrick. That is insane. Anyway, this episode was just great and really shows that SpongeBob can take a simple idea like painting and turn it into such an entertaining, funny, stressful episode. Not to mention, this episode is one of the highest rated episodes, and it's literally just about painting. That's crazy, but it's so deserved. This episode was a masterpiece. But yeah, it's no stressful episode SpongeBob. Stressful episode SpongeBob. The painting episode. Patrick put the walls. But it's permanent. But the wall, the butts on the walls. So they gotta be careful. And it's just stressful.